With the 2023 NHL trade deadline getting closer and closer, we've seen tons of players, specifically forwards, being linked to the Toronto Maple Leafs in a trade, with Patrick Kane likely being the highest profile among them. But today I'm going to be dissecting why, to me, a Patrick Kane trade to Toronto would be an absolute mistake. Hello guys, and welcome back to Grav Spicy Takes. This week we're taking a look at Patrick Kane and the fit with the Toronto Maple Leafs and why I think the Leafs should look elsewhere. Now, with all the speculation and all the craziness surrounding this trade deadline, we've heard really one constant theme when it comes to Toronto and their plans for the trade deadline, and that is to acquire a forward. Whether it be a big-time one or a bottom-six player, the Leafs are going to acquire somebody most likely at the deadline, and Patrick Kane has been one of the most rumored out of all of them. With him obviously wanting to go to the New York Rangers and that not really working out with the Vladimir Tarasenko deal, there's been so many eyes that have now been cast towards the Toronto Maple Leafs in a Patrick Kane deal. Now, let's start off today with the first big reason why I think a Patrick Kane deal in Toronto is just not the way to go, and to me, we'll start off with the cost here. Not even just talking about the situation that Chicago's in and the asking price that they'd want for Kane in a trade. Also, you got to consider the cap situation. Even though he is a rental, he does make $10.5 million this season, and he has a full no-move clause. So if Kane doesn't want to go to Toronto, he's not going to go to Toronto, simply put. And especially with how many solid wingers are out there on the market right now, are the Leafs in a mood to give up another first-round pick and likely another solid prospect up in a Patrick Kane deal? I mean, you saw what happened with the Nick Foligno trade a couple of years back, and to me, they're definitely not comparable players, but maybe comparable situations, and that might be a lesson on Kyle Dubas's end that maybe keeps him from going after another big trade deadline fish that would only last half a year. But even if the Leafs are comfortable in making a Patrick Kane trade, even if Kane is comfortable going to Toronto by himself, the second reason why I think a Patrick Kane deal would be a mistake is simply the effort to be able to trade for. And what I mean by the effort is this. When we look at the Leafs' current cap situation at the deadline, they'll have $1.1 million to work with. And throughout some other trade targets that the Leafs have been in speculation with, there's always been the theory that they could send Alex Kerfoot going the other way. But even if the Blackhawks have 50% retention, bring Patrick Kane's deal down to $5.25 million, and the Leafs give up Alexander Kerfoot, it's still not going to be enough money to make the cap work. You'd still have to give up another player on top of that, and what's most likely going to have to happen if Kane does go to Toronto is that there's another team involved to get some of that salary retention down to around $2 million. Now, we did see the Leafs getting involved in a deal like this with the Robin Leonard deal, so Kyle Dubas isn't afraid of these three-team deals, but it would require a lot of effort and a lot of math to be able to get the deal done, and likely a player like a Kerfoot or Engvall as well out the door. That also leads me on to the third reason why I think a Patrick Kane deal is just not the right move, and that is also the fit at hand in the lineup for Toronto. And they'd be in a unique position, and I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to have Patrick Kane potentially on that first line with Matthews and Nylander. But with Patrick Kane, he would be on that right wing, which would mean you'd have to put up William Nylander on the left. And to me, there's no real shot that you can really change those lines either, since Marner will likely be cemented on that right wing alongside Tavares. So if that first line isn't going, if you want to demote somebody, if you want to change things up, there's not really a ton of flexibility unless you bring up a player like a William Nylander, or you put maybe Bunting on the left wing instead. To me, there would be a lot less flexibility there, and to me, when it comes especially to that first line, as much as I love Nylander and Matthews, if it's Nylander, Matthews, and Kane, not exactly the best defensively, and to me, they would have to also rely a lot more on that middle six to get those defensive draws and those defensive shutdown plays. But that also kind of leads me on to my fourth reason why I think a Patrick Kane deal to Toronto would be kind of iffy, and this goes for any team that ends up trading for him, and that is the health at hand. I mean, we can speculate all we want about how he'd fit in Toronto, how he'd do, but that's kind of assuming he's 100% healthy. There's been so much speculation about his hip and what could be going on there, and even though he's denied it, with the results that he's shown this season and just the lack of quickness that he's had this season, it does feel like it might be something that's at least nagging on him. I think that's fair to say, at least with what we've seen for him this season. And even though he might still be able to overcome that, there might be some issues, especially if the Leafs are somehow even able to win a round. If he gets farther and farther into the playoffs, whether there will be some wear and tear, even in the first round, if there will be some wear and tear. And that is definitely a concern for the Leafs. And then going on to my fifth reason why I think a Patrick Kane deal to Toronto wouldn't work, and that is also the other options at hand. I think we all can understand that Toronto is going to trade for a forward here, and although Patrick Kane is definitely an option, I think there's a lot more options that do fit better for them personally and likely would cost less too. Even if you don't want to go after Timo Meier, I still think there's a lot of options out there that would cost the Leafs a lot less, specifically with the prospect pool. And one that kind of comes to mind for me, even though I still have some defensive issues with him, is Ivan Barbashev, who would likely cost maybe a second round pick, maybe a second round pick into like a mid prospect. But to me, he's a player that brings a lot more physicality than Patrick Kane, only has a few less points than this year, has more goals with 10 this year. And again, that physical aspect of his game is way more involved than with Patrick Kane. And to me, if you're going to go for a left winger who can provide some spark, can provide some energy, he's going to cost a lot less than Kane and is still a rental if you do want to go after a UFA guy. And to me, also brings a lot more youth at age 27, and I think it'll be pretty fun to see alongside Matthews and Martin. And even if you don't want to have him on the first line, you could put him in that second line with Tavares and Marner and bring a really balanced second line, which would also put Kerfoot down to the third. And with Barbashev, he's also proven, especially in these past couple of years, to be a pretty excellent finisher. And alongside Marner, I think that could definitely be needed on that second line. To me, yeah, Timo Meier would be the most ideal fit, but even if you don't want to go after that big guy and that big fish, there are still options that I think would be more cost efficient for Toronto than Kane. But I could definitely still see where the Leafs would be coming from in a Patrick Kane deal. I mean, alongside Matthews, it could be a match made in heaven, but to me, there's so much risk involved with the cost, with the effort that it would take to make a trade, as well as just the health concerns, that to me, that risk might outweigh the reward. But let me know in the comments down below, do you guys agree or disagree with my spicy take this week? Do you guys think the Leafs should trade for Patrick Kane? Do you think they shouldn't? Do you think they should go after some other player like Timo Meier, Barbashev, maybe a James Van Riemsdyk or a Tyler Bertuzzi? Let us know down below. Of course, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and I will see you next week for next week's spicy takes. Have a great one, everyone, and goodbye.